for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football.
Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Nearly 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 17th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state, celebrating 23 years of excellence. Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Brian Eikenberry and Andy Hall.
If that doesn't get you stoked to talk fantasy football, nothing will. Nothing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the 515 Fantasy Football Podcast. Andy Hall, joined by my co-host, Mr. Brian Eikenberry. Hello, Brian.
Hello to you, hello to our listeners, and we are a week away from the NFL season. Can you feel it?
Dude, I mean, I just wish it was here now. Like, if it was Thursday right now, I'd be a very happy camper.
It's one of those times where, you make that journey into adulthood and you are no longer waiting for Christmas. You are now waiting for the NFL season to start. That's what it feels like to me. Because I'm having these discussions at work and it's like, well, you technically don't count today. And you technically don't count the first game that's coming. So you trim those 2 days off and you're only looking at like 6 days. That's not bad.
And we got a Labor Day weekend coming up here and everything else. I can't wait to get my feet in a lake, get up to the cabin out of town. Do you have any plans for Labor Day weekend?
I got some family coming to town, but other than that, it is going to be a chill, spend time with loved ones, because after that, the next 16 to 20 Sundays are booked.
See, I don't know about your wife, but my wife knows better than to try to hit me up with anything serious around football season, especially on Sundays. She knows better. She knows to just leave me alone.
Yeah, it's pretty much in the vows and the contract that's signed. You sign the marriage license, but then there's also that separate agreement, where you have those days off. And that's how I'm like, look, it's just 16 minimum, and then we'll count the playoffs depending on if my team's there or not. So we'll kind of just go from there. But yeah, Sunday, shut down, food gorge day, and just treat my body like garbage.
You and I have been through some drafts already. I don't know about you, but I still have a couple remaining between now and next Thursday, so we'll break down some draft stuff. We'll talk strength of schedule a little bit later on. A segment I call Things That Make You Go, coming up. We'll also do our pop quiz, but I want to start, Brian, with some headlines, and there's been plenty of action around the NFL that is fantasy relevant over the course of the past week. By the way, does it feel like a week since we last did this? It feels like so much longer to me.
Yeah, it's kind of another one of those things where you're just kind of counting down the days and waiting for our opportunity to get together and just be dudes talking about stuff we love.
That's right. All right, well, first things first, in terms of headlines, I just want to hit this real quick. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But an ESPN analyst called Trent Richardson the worst NFL running back of all time. Trent Richardson, by the way, waived by the Oakland Raiders. You know things are bad when you're waived by that team.
Yeah, it's where careers go to die, and then once you get cut from Oakland, that's kind of it. I do like to go back a few years to when Cleveland made that trade, and everybody went, what are the Browns doing? Typical Browns just lost their mind, right? And everybody the Browns could not have made a worse decision. Browns look like they were pretty brilliant. They didn't do much with the picks, but, you got to give them credit for seeing this coming a long ways away.
Oh, dude, they totally fleeced Indianapolis. There's no question about it. Totally fleeced. So T-Rich waived, no surprise to anybody. Also, a surprise cut, Fred Jackson, co-college grad, Buffalo Bills. Didn't see that one coming. Now there's a story out there that suggests that the GM went rogue and cut him on his own, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, that was, just one of them headliners where I'm getting text messages during the day and without even seeing the headlines, and just kind of those what moments. And, Mr. Reliable. I mean, he has always been there when they needed him. And we always talk about, the clubs treating those very special, heavily involved in the community players. But one man's trash is another man's treasure, and someone's going to be very happy here real soon.
Of course, he's already made a visit to Seattle, which would be an interesting place for him to land. But real quick, going back to the Buffalo situation, it's not as if they're in a great spot. I mean, LeSean McCoy is not even a guarantee, a lock to start game one for the Buffalo Bills. It's not as if they couldn't use the depth at that position. All there is besides Fred Jackson and LeSean McCoy is pretty much Bryce Brown.
Yeah, I'm definitely confused with what the Bills is doing, and even inside their quarterback situation, if we wanted to kind of steer that conversation, Tyrod Taylor is the starter for week 1. That was something we had talked about last week and just did not see that coming. And for the fun fact of the day, Tyrod Taylor's last start was as a senior in the Orange Bowl in January of 2011. So,
oh man,
good day to be a Bill.
I guess. I do see Tyrod Taylor. He is a bit of a weapon. He can run. He's great on his feet. I don't know what he can do in terms of passing. I haven't paid that close attention, full disclosure. But I will say that Matt Castle is your pocket passer. Matt Castle no longer a guarantee to even make the squad at this point because they've also got E.J. Manuel in the stable. So what the Bills are going to do here is anybody's guess, but they can certainly save themselves some cash, I suppose, by cutting Matt Castle. But it's an iffy proposal there.
Yeah, just total madness there. It's one of the things where you think they might have it figured out this year, and then in the course of 2 or 3 weeks, it's just complete disaster.
Moving on, Julius Thomas. There has been suggested a sort of timetable for his return following surgery to his injured finger, which I believe he was under the knife today, if I'm not mistaken. Currently, it's looking like he'll be back week 4, week 5, maybe.
Yeah, week 4, week 5, that's kind of seems to be the big consensus. And for the most part, it's a guy we've known who's taking care of himself. He hasn't done anything. He's always in shape. So I'm not too concerned about the timeline, but it's one of those things where, are you going to draft him? Especially in a tight end league, we know it's Julius Thomas, so he can catch the ball. He has the ability to do so. Is it someone you're going to burn a pick on, knowing that in 4 to 5 weeks, he is just going to be collecting dust on your bench? So for me, yeah, I'd totally do it just because if you need that safety net, your bye weeks don't even hit then. So, your first 6 picks are your starters. So you really don't even need to dig into your bench at that point.
There's so many good tight ends out there this year. If you don't grab a Rob Gronkowski, or maybe put Jimmy Graham up in the same category, in the same conversation as a Gronk, but there's all these sort of upside guys mid-tier that you can totally wait on, and you don't need to swing for the fences with somebody like Julius Thomas, particularly seeing as he made the move to Jacksonville, and there's no guarantee he's going to produce like he did in Denver in Jacksonville. So it'd be interesting to see what people do going forward here, but I certainly wouldn't draft him where his current ADP is.
No, not even close. I wasn't that optimistic on his situation to begin with.
Martavis Bryant's suspension has been upheld. 4 games.
That's another one of them. Do you draft him? In the couple that I've done and kind of where he's going, I'm not wasting the pick. There's so much action in Pittsburgh that's for the taking. It sucks that it got upheld, but that's just kind of the way it goes. And for me, that's a pass. I think there's a lot more receivers to target. If his suspension got overturned, he's back to draftable, but that's a spot that I'm just not willing to deal with.
I disagree. The way I draft Brian is I like to load up on receivers early if I can, depending on where I land in a draft. And in the terms of Martavis Bryant, by the time it comes around, the opportunity to grab him, I'm already 2, sometimes even 3 wide receivers deep. And if he's my 3rd or 4th receiver option and there's no running backs on the board that I'm all that excited about, and maybe I, can wait a little longer on quarterback, I definitely take Martavis Bryant because the bye weeks don't begin until week 4 anyway. So you're probably not going to run into that issue. And I think Martavis Bryant's ceiling is stupid high this year. I'm a big believer in this guy.
We got 9 minutes in before the first disagreement, so that's better than we did last week.
Great minds think alike, Brian. I was just thinking the same thing looking at my clock here. Emmanuel Sanders has resumed practicing. He is, of course, the wide receiver 2 in that Denver offense. It'll be good to have him back and get some chemistry going with Peyton.
Yeah, there was just a lot of danger this week and last week, but there's been a lot of good prosperous news of people coming back. People were coming off the PUP list, so that was a welcome addition back to practice and back into the flow of things, because that's one of those people, it's a wide receiver and a very heavy passing offense, and, those are points for the taking right there.
I mean, they want to run the ball more in Denver, but it's no secret to anybody who's been watching this preseason. Denver's offensive line is awful. And if anything scares the crap out of me, it's the offensive line. And is Peyton Manning going to have more than 1.1 second to get a pass off and let his wide receivers run their routes? I don't think so. It's not looking good so far for Denver. So I'm taking a pass in most drafts on Emmanuel Sanders unless I can get a bargain on him. Moving on here in the news, Joique Bell, speaking of the PUP list, activated from that PUP list, giving a little more indication of how that Detroit backfield is going to shake down come week 1. My opinion looks like Joique Bell's probably your starter. They'll work in Amir Abdullah, and it'll probably be somewhere in the 75-25 range in terms of percentages for touches. Your take?
Disagreement number 2 for the evening. I'm thinking it's going to be a different situation. Amir Abdullah is the big pass catcher there, and so I see Amir being 1st and 2nd down, and 3rd down and inside the 10 or the 15 is the Joique Bell show. I think they're going to keep Joique Bell out of those 1st and 2nd down situations because of his injury history. This is something that I wanted to chase after Abdullah, but it's also one of them things. It's not. I think he's got the higher upside than Joique Bell does. Joique's going to get them touchdowns, but Amir Abdullah is going to get those bigger opportunities for them 40 and 50-yard gains. So I think it's going to be more back to 50-50.
You believe in those rookie running backs. I'll tell you right now, Brian, if he's not gained the trust of his coaching staff there in Detroit and doesn't know how to pass protect yet, ain't no way he's going to be in there in 1st and 2nd down. So like that disagreement, we'll see how the situation shakes out. Like I said, at least Joique Bell activated from the PUP list. Here's an interesting situation I'm not sure many saw coming. Washington Redskins, who is starting at quarterback? It is Kirk Cousins. RG3 has been benched.
Well, and not only benched, there is conversation that he is done in the organization. And, what a difference a season makes. I was not big on the guy. From what I've seen and just an amateur armchair quarterback, he just didn't want to listen to the coaching staff. He did not want to do what was instructed. Not always a fault on the quarterback. You cannot take a quarterback who's played a certain way for all through high school and college, and then all of a sudden make him into somebody he's not. So, right coach, right system, he has another shot, but some of the stuff that I've been reading, he's done.
It's a nice bump up for the Redskins wide receivers, not to mention I think the running game benefits from having Kirk Cousins under center as well. Moving on, T.Y. Hilton, expected to be cleared on Thursday from concussion that he suffered earlier on this week. A little bit of a scare there in Indy.
Yeah, it's just another one of those. I think it was 2 days later they announced that he had the concussion, which was a little bit weird. But all on when you draft, it's those heart attacks that you have. You just draft somebody, and then 2 days later you learn that they have a concussion. And the way concussions go is you never know when someone's coming back. Sometimes they come back the next week. Sometimes it's 6 weeks before they come back. Sometimes they never come back from a concussion. So it's scary when you read someone like T.Y. Hilton is out with a concussion. That's pretty important in today's NFL.
Looks like he's going to pass all those protocols, though, and get back to practice, and he's on track for week 1, the season opener. The Pittsburgh Steelers have signed a kicker. They actually accepted a trade from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Josh Scobie comes over and finally gets to kick for a halfway decent team. How about that?
Hey, he just vaulted his draft stock up there. It's one of them where you're not going to take him, but now all of a sudden it's a totally different game. But it's a totally different kicking game in Pittsburgh than it was in Jacksonville. Totally different environment, probably a 70-degree difference when you get to November and December. So careful what you wish for there, Scobie. There might be ice on that ball.
I like the fact that Scobie is going to be had for relatively cheap, and plus his team is on bye in week 11, so you're getting the maximum amount of weeks to only carry one kicker. The only thing I suppose you'll have to worry about is the terrible luck Steelers kickers have had thus far this season, having been through 2 of them already, both Schweizum and who was the second guy they brought in, Hartley?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's become almost laughable, almost like a This Is Spinal Tap moment. What happened to the drummer now? Did he spontaneously combust?
Yeah, but just one of them dangers, but, risky business being the kicker, right? You should know this.
Yeah, I've never had that major an injury from maybe if I tried to chase down a returner that got by the front lines on a kickoff or something, but I never snapped anything, never hurt anything, and I certainly never did what that Grammatica fella did several years ago and hurt myself celebrating. So a few more items here in terms of headlines. Some running backs by committees here in the NFL. Some of them have started to clear up a bit, and we're getting a better look at some of these teams and how the touches are going to break out. Let's talk about the San Diego backfield first and foremost. I think conventional wisdom for most that are drafting right now or have drafted is that Melvin Gordon, the rookie out of Wisconsin, is going to be the guy and carry the load there in San Diego, but I see more of a committee than most people realize.
I do too. And if you look, I always look for the stories from the players, not the beat writers. And when they're coming out, I believe it was Phillip Rivers came out and talked about he needs to use more of his instincts rather than his eyes. He's kind of hesitating on some cuts and stuff like that. That, as an owner who may have drafted him high, scares me a little bit because you're drafting him high because he's the guy. But when something like that comes out and he's not seeing it, it goes back to that rookie running back conversation. He may not be up to speed with that level of fast play in the NFL. So it might take him a little bit, and that's where that committee comes in.
I'm not targeting Melvin Gordon in any of my drafts due to his ADP. It's just too high for my blood, too rich for my blood. I'm targeting Danny Woodhead in quite a few of my leagues, and some of them are PPR, some of them aren't. One thing I'm encouraged by regarding Danny Woodhead, not only the fact that he seems to be back and healthy, but the fact that the Chargers have no problem throwing him in there in goal line type situations, which is kind of odd considering he's one of the smallest guys in the league.
But he's quick and he's small, and he can hide behind that line and pop out anywhere at any time, and that's what's dangerous. As the bigger linemen get, your running backs are that much easier to hide.
Another situation that we've been trying to figure out is the Dallas Cowboys situation. For no more reason than you saw what DeMarco Murray did last year in leading the NFL in rushing behind an amazing offensive line. I put the Dallas Cowboys up there in the top 3 for sure. This year, though, for those that thought it was going to be the Joseph Randle show, think again. Joseph Randle may be the 1A in this formula, but Darren McFadden is definitely a 1B, and not too far down that depth chart is, now I'm forgetting his name, Lance Dunbar.
Well, I called it. This was something that we talked about last week, and, keep a close eye on Randle, as McFadden is going to be that back he was drafted to be. And it looks like it is turning that direction, and I am eager to see what he can do because I've got him in one of my leagues, and I like being right, so that's always cool. But it's bad for all the people who drafted Randall really high. And that's kind of my mantra this year for the running back position was be safe, be safe, be safe, be safe. Because if you miss on something as important as the running back position when there are so few out there that are going to be the workload, it's very, very bad place to be.
Yeah, aside from the pitfalls of drafting early, like, injury risks and all of that, there's this to consider too when the training camp battles are still happening and some of the waters are still a bit murky. It seems to me that it's a 1A, 1B situation. It could be very 50-50. I think I even predicted that last week in episode 1 of this podcast. So it seems to be on track to be just that, a 50-50 by committee approach. And I think maybe the only Cowboy running back I would look to target, considering his ADP, is probably Dunbar, the guy whose name I couldn't think of a few minutes ago. So one last item, another running back by committee, and this one surprises me a bit, is Washington. It's not just going to be the Alfred Morris show apparently this year, as rookie Matt Jones has turned some heads.
Yeah, I don't think I'm buying this one. A lot of the other ones I'm buying, but it was never Alfred Morris's fault. I think he's much better than what his stats show. And I think this is just kind of a smoke and mirrors to kind of get things going. I mean, if you look at the organization as a whole and where things are going, it's looking bad. So maybe they just needed to spice it up. I'm not too confident. But again, I didn't draft Alfred Morris either.
Well, thank goodness for that. Let's move on to our pop quiz segment, Brian. Again, to remind our listeners, the pop quiz, anywhere between 3 and 5 questions. I'll throw it out there. I'll get your take on it, Brian, and then I'll give everybody the right answer. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. And just for the record, I have no idea what these questions are.
I write them up ahead of time. I do not share them with Mr. Brian before we hit the air. So these are completely unfettered takes by Mr. Eikenberry. Question number 1, Brian. Do you buy into the bye-week stacking theory when you draft your team?
Yes, 100%. And I will tell you why. If you can stack them all, your starters will all play together for the majority of the season. But if you're someone who spreads it out between, weeks 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, that's 5 weeks. Your starters are not all playing together, and you are not playing at maximum efficiency. And to me, that is a very dangerous place to be in. I would rather have a week. Is that even a thing? A week.
Well, they're spelled differently.
E-A-K.
Yeah.
Right there, and like say week 9 was a very popular bye week situation that I kept finding myself in this weekend. I'm okay with that. Let me just be up front and take that loss and hope my opponent is in the same situation, because I want to be at maximum efficiency weeks 1 through 7, weeks 1 through 8, and then especially like week 11 all the way out.
I think this was a pretty easy question for the pop quiz. The answer is absolutely yes. It doesn't happen very often, at least not for me, because I target players I like, and I target players that I can get at a good value. But if it just so happens that I'm drafting and all these guys seem to be lining up in the same bye week, I'm completely happy with throwing one game in the regular season for the benefit of the rest of my season. So that was an easy one. Number 2, in a 12-team snake draft, where, in your opinion, Brian, is the sweetest spot?
Either corner. Get me on the corners. If it's a 12-team that 7, 6, 7, 8, that's a dangerous spot to be in. Get me out of there. Either get me in the first 3 or the last 3, because I need them back-to-back picks. It's easier to plan for, and that's what I like, is the more predictability you can put into it as it's coming down. It allows you to plan better. So as the snake is coming back and forth, if you know it's going to be 20 picks until I get to go again, you can say, wow, nobody else has taken a quarterback. I'm probably going to have to react now, because everybody else is going to pick twice before it gets back to me if you're on a corner. So thinking about the draft and what's coming up, because if you don't, then 6 quarterbacks go off the board. That's a big point difference, So you got to be able to plan for that. If you're in the middle, you're 10 picks away each time, 11 picks away each time, and that does not give you a lot of time to react to what the feel and the vibe is going to be. You can set the pace rather than reacting to the pace.
You're knocking it out of the park so far, Brian. You're absolutely right. I've drafted from both ends, and I've also been in the middle. The drafts I'm happiest with happen to be the ones where I'm actually at the back of the draft, either picks 10, 11, or 12. I tend to have my happiest drafts. So I had one draft where I actually drafted number 1. It was only an 8-team league. I'm in one of those this year. I've never done it before, and this is like 8 teams, super deep bench. I'll have to run down the team for you because you're going to be like, were you drafting?
You got nothing but superstars.
Were you drafting with giraffes? What the hell were you doing? No, these are actually guys that know what the hell they're doing, and I still walked away from it feeling like I drafted the greatest fantasy football team of all time. So we'll see how that all goes. Next question in the pop quiz. Interested to hear your take on this, Brian. Rank the Saints pass catchers in order from most receptions to least, if you would.
Oh, this isn't even fair. Saints, well, what I think is they're going to get or what they did last year, or what am I projecting?
You're projecting.
Well, let's see. The knee-jerk reaction is to put Colston up at the top of the list, but he's slowed down quite a bit, and he's just not really doing it for me. Hold on a second. Who else we got on there?
Well, in New Orleans, of course, at wide receivers, you have Brandon Cooks, you have Brandon Coleman, you have Marcus Colston. They just cut the two kids, so he's out of there. You got Hill and Watson at tight end. You've got the running backs as well, so a lot of options there. And
sure.
You can rank as many as you like. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm up to speed now. So Brandon Coleman is someone I do have. I was picking him late just because he's a big guy, man. I mean, he's 6'6", so he's going to be all right. So I'm going to go with Cooks, Coleman, Colston, CCC, Brandon Cooks, Brandon Coleman, Marquise Colston. Okay. I think Colston is the old man out, and he's 10 years older than Brandon Cooks is at this point. So that's an issue. That's a lot of speed there. Cooks is a smaller guy, built for speed. Coleman's the long down the field guy, touchdowns. Yeah, Colston's on the way out.
I have the wide receivers ranked exactly the same, but I also mixed in a running back and a tight end. Where would
Spiller.
You put? Yeah, where would you put Spiller in that mix?
All right, so I'm sorry, Colston, but I'll even throw Spiller ahead of Colston because that's his role. That's the whole point of him being there, is he's going to be the Reggie Bush of old. He's going to swing out, catch that little hook, or just go. I mean, he's set up for the screens. Everything is there for Spiller to have a big year, in my opinion.
I would agree. I mean, you look at last year, 83 catches between Pierre Thomas and Traveris Cadet, neither of which are on the team this year. I think Spiller is probably number 2 in the pecking order of the Saints pass catchers. I think Cooks will be number 1. Spiller should be 2. Brandon Coleman, I'll give 3. I think Hill is going to be a slow burn, so I give him 4. And then I think Colston is bringing up the rear as far as Saints pass catchers. And he's, like you said earlier, getting older, phasing out of that offense. So that is how I rank them. Any thoughts?
No, I'm right in there with you. Yeah, it's good to go. Colston, sad to see him go, man. He's been Mr. Reliable in a few of my drafts of old. And, it's a different ball game down there. Joe Lombardi's gone. I don't think it's a good place to be as what it used to be.
All right, so we talked the Dallas Cowboy runners earlier a bit, and I think we both agree it's going to be as close to a 50-50 split as you can possibly have in the NFL. Right? You wouldn't disagree with that, right? 50-50?
Yep, I'm thinking 50-50 till week 5.
All right, give me the percentage split you see for carries out of the Browns runners.
Is it possible to do 10-10s? I'm surprised Fred Jackson didn't go there to be reliable. I understand that he's old. I understand what it is going to be, but I'm thinking I'm gonna rely on Crowell here. I think he's got the big majority of it. I would go like 75% Crowell and maybe even the majority, just because. I mean, who's the other guy? That Drone or whatever.
Well, Terrence West is still there. Plus, they've got the rookie Duke Johnson as well.
So I'm thinking Crowell's gonna take it, just from a standpoint of who else they got. And from what I've seen, I didn't think the rookie was doing a whole bunch, but I could be completely wrong.
They wanted Duke Johnson to be the starter week one. Unfortunately, he got hurt, so it looks like it's going to be the Crowell West backfield, at least for week one, and we'll see how they want to mix Duke Johnson in later on. But as far as the split goes, over the course of a season, I would say that Crowell is probably the lead back, but not by as much as some people think. I think this is kind of like a 60-40. And then, like I said, it's really going to get muddy once Duke Johnson gets involved, because I don't know in what capacity he's going to excel in that backfield. Granted, Cleveland's got a pretty decent offensive line there. They certainly know how to pass protect, and they can create some holes. They're big guys, and they're skilled at what they do. But the Browns apparently just haven't found that guy back there that they're comfortable giving the ball to all the time.
Well, there were even those early reports of that running backs coach coming out and giving that crazy press conference where he was saying nobody wants this job and nobody wants to be the starter, and we're looking for somebody to stand up and say the job is theirs, So it's kind of one of them things. It could be 10-10s by the time the season's done. Who knows?
It could be. The final question in today's pop quiz, same question for the Atlanta Falcons. What do you think the percentage is going to be? And I think we're only dealing with two. If you want to add in the third and Smith, go ahead. But I think this is mainly between Freeman and Coleman.
I think this is going to be, it is 50-50. Whoever's got the hot hand, I don't see there being a very big swing in there. It's another one of them terrible line situations. I don't really think it matters who's going to be back there. It's probably not going to be a good situation. I think it's going to be a 50-50. There's no clear-cut starter. There's no clear-cut, head above, this is the guy who it is. And it's really going to come down to how well Matty Ice does.
I think they want to give the rock to Devontae Freeman, as odd as that sounds. And my gut tells me that once he's healthy, he's going to be your week one starter, and he's going to be taking most of the snaps, I think, in week one. So we'll see how that goes going forward. He looked very pedestrian at best in limited action last season. So you're probably right, though, unless you're in some sort of a dynasty league, which I happen to be in, you probably don't want to own either one of these guys. You're certainly not reaching for them if you're drafting. So there you have it. I think you did pretty well in this pop quiz this week, Brian. Nicely done.
Yay. 3 or 5 gold stars. How many gold stars?
Today I'm going to give you 3. I think I gave you 2 last week, didn't I?
All right, cool.
Yeah. We're
Progress.
working our way up. This should be an interesting segment. Things that make you go, And the reason I'm titling it that is sometimes in fantasy football, there are some head scratchers. The first one I'm going to throw out is looking at a lot of experts' cheat sheets, and I'm seeing some statistical anomalies, some things that just don't match up.
Is this going to make me sweat till I bleed?
It might.
Okay.
It might. I would have a first aid kit handy if you've got one.
Perfect.
All right, so my first one here is the New York Jets, a team that people have traditionally tried to avoid, if at all possible, for several seasons now. They have some real playmakers in this offense, come to find out. They traded for Brandon Marshall. Eric Decker is another year into this system, and we've seen what he can do given the right circumstances. Chris Ivory is highly underrated, in my opinion. All they're really missing is a tight end. Jason Morrow's been put on IR for the season. That's unfortunate. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, ranked among the worst quarterbacks in the league. A lot of cheat sheets I've seen. How does that work out, Brian?
Well, I think it comes down to just consistency of Fitzpatrick. For me, he's one of those guys, he's either going to get you 40 points or 4 points. And that's how I see Fitz. But it also comes down to just the overall situation. You look at people's power rankings, you look at people's just preseason rankings, and it's a dangerous place to be. You can't go with what Yahoo tells you to draft. Fitz is there for a reason. I think the Jets' chances are a whole lot better with Fitz there than Geno there.
Agreed. Now, here's what I'm going to say. He's got all these weapons. He's been able to do it in the past. We've seen him do it with much less. Like Houston, for example, where he had Andre Johnson, he had Owen Daniels, halfway decent tight end. He had a good running game, and he had a pretty poor offensive line. He's got better weapons to work with in New York. I think his ranking should be higher. In fact, if you look at my cheat sheets, Ryan Fitzpatrick, borderline quarterback 2. I wouldn't mind having him, and I do have him in some leagues as my backup quarterback.
Well, I don't think it's so much as why isn't he higher? Because if he goes higher, then others have to go lower. And that, I think, is the other part of the formula that you have to look at. Is if he's going higher, then other people got to go lower. But I'll give Fitz his stuff, man. If he's still got his beard, look out.
Yeah, he could hide some human beings in that thing at this point. There's no question about it. Another thing that makes me go, Now, this is in terms of when you're drafting. Doesn't matter what size your league you're in. I've been in 8-team leagues, 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues, 14-team leagues. I won't go any higher than that. But it seems like in every league, there's one guy, and you know the type of guy I'm talking about here, Brian. One guy who doesn't even necessarily need to be chemically enhanced to act a certain way, but he's the loudest trash talker. His trash talk makes no sense, and his draft picks, for that matter, are even more perplexing. I had a guy, true story, write in not one, but 2 of his picks in a recent draft. One of those picks, they didn't have the sticker for because he's been out of the league for several years. His name is Randy Moss.
Things that make you go, So
why would somebody put money into a league, invest in a league, and completely waste a draft pick like that?
Are these serious picks like in the top half or these bottom half?
Oh, we're getting down to the bottom, but I think the point here is that it's that guy in your draft that everybody seems to have. This is the same guy. Again, true story, and I hope he hears this. It'd be hilarious. He is the same guy that was talking trash about my Arian Foster pick in that league. Arian Foster is my running back 4 in that league. It was probably the steal of the draft if Foster comes back and does what he's capable of doing. But this guy was the only one to really pipe up and think that was ridiculous and a waste of a pick. Yet here he is writing in Randy Moss.
Yeah, so I think that's a combination of 2 things. All right, so let me just say this. We got a guy who's similar to that, but he's like that with his trades. This is the same guy who we have an IDP in our league. He drafts an IDP with his 7th pick, and it's not J.J. Watt. And he's been doing this for years. And he's like, well, look at my IDP. It's like, oh, God, are you serious? Like, you didn't even have your wide receivers filled, and you're picking an IDP already. So the trade that was sent, and it was screenshotted and text messaged all over the league. And I even confronted him about it. He's like, that's not a bad trade. So this guy drafted Charles Sims. He sends a legitimate trade to another guy for Amir Abdullah, straight up. And of course, hilarity ensues, screenshots send all over the place. And I'm like, dude, that was a terrible trade. Why would you even do that? And he was dead serious that this was a perfect trade. And this guy is also the same guy who accepted a job at Best trade, 3 years ago after he had been ruled out for the year.
Oh. Are we all trying to out-taco one another at this point?
Nope, it's just we got that one guy. His thing is trades. Most of our trash talkers in our league back it up. But this guy in his trades is just, it's hilarity. We get a pretty good kick out of it.
I love when I'm like the dominant team in the league. Maybe I'm undefeated after 4 or 5 weeks, and I have teams that are in the 0, 1, even 2 category who are throwing these ridiculous trade offers at me. I'm like, hey guys, don't you realize I'm the leader here? Like, you're not going to send me a trade offer that favors you and favors you heavily. I'm going to laugh at you. I'm going to mock you, ridicule you, and then I'm going to throw your trade offer out with the trash.
Yeah, we should probably have a segment at some point and discuss the value and trade etiquette. Maybe that's something we talk about as we get going and we start going, because I think that's a pretty sensitive topic for a lot of people, because you have a lot of people who think, I have to get the better value of this trade. I have got to be on top. But it's not really what trade's all about. Trade's about helping out yourself, but you also have to help out the other guy, or he's going to hit decline, screenshot it, and send it to everybody else and make fun of you.
Or just flat out take it personally. I mean, there have been times where guys, I get so angry at guys. I'm like, do you think I'm an idiot?
Yeah.
That's where I kind of go sometimes with people. And, generally not with people I'm friendly with. But if it's somebody who I just kind of casually know and you're going to throw something at me hoping I hit the wrong button, the accept button instead of the reject button, how stupid do you think I am? I kind of tend to take stuff like that personally. Maybe it's just the competitor in me. I don't know.
I could see where you do that. I could see how I know you well enough.
You wouldn't do that to me, Brian.
No, I wouldn't, because it's one of my pet peeves too. It's like, if you're going to send a trade, it needs to be mutually beneficial.
So I'm in the midst of building my auction dynasty league right now, and the free agency free-for-all is happening online, so I'm sort of monitoring some players. I'm grabbing some players as we're talking here. I've done 2 snake drafts thus far. I still have 2 to go before next Thursday's game 1 of the NFL season. Do you want to run down some rosters, how you've done in your draft, and have a little convo?
Yeah, sure. Let me get them pulled up here. And
let me start first with a work league that I'm in with some coworkers at the Radio Ranch and elsewhere. This is a 12-team standard league. The only exception in the rules is the fact that you get 6 points per passing touchdown. So I guess quarterbacks are favored a little more than your typical standard league. But 12 teams, snake draft. It was completely at random. And I got one of those spots, Brian, that you talked about wanting to avoid like the plague. I got the 7 pick. Ugh.
Yucky.
I seem to get the worst picks every year in this work league. So what I did was I watched the first few picks go. Funny enough, Le'Veon Bell went right in front of me at 6. Had he lasted until 7, I probably would have pulled the trigger on him.
Oh, yeah, gravy train.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. But as it was, I took Des Bryant. On the way back, much to my surprise, Julio Jones was still available. I took Julio. My lineup looks like this. Quarterback, Tony Romo. Running back, I'm kind of trying to decide between the 2 old men. I have Alfred Morris and I have Jonathan Stewart. I also grabbed Danny Woodhead late. It'll be one of those 2. Dez, Julio, Brandon Cooks. I also got Eric Decker. I also got rookie Devontae Parker. Those are my wide receivers. I've got Owen Daniels at tight end. I grabbed Josh Scobie for my kicker. And I got the Arizona Cards as my defense and special teams.
Intriguing.
Your thoughts?
I think you're pretty good in the wide receiver category.
Yeah.
I think you're probably going to have your fingers crossed on your running backs.
Agreed.
Hoping to find that fountain of youth in some of them people, but you got the workhorses. You got people who are going to get the rock, and I think that's what you got going for you. Or they can catch passes, and that's another good thing you got going, which helps
Absolutely.
out if your team's behind. You usually just cash in the running, especially let's look at Carolina's situation. They're not going to be launching downfield to Kelvin Benjamin anymore. They're probably going to be playing from behind. So it means Cam's going to have to do a lot of stuff. But if you have a running back who can catch passes, that alleviates that running back is over, no more run plays kind of a thing. And that it balances it out. So I think you'll do all right.
I don't think Jonathan Stewart was given enough opportunity to catch passes last season. I don't have the stats right here in front of me, but I don't think he caught a whole lot of passes. He certainly wasn't much of a threat. I think there might have been one receiving touchdown in there, but he was mainly just a runner last season. So we'll see if they do try to incorporate the running backs into that passing game a bit, seeing as they're pretty low on
What's your team
passing
name?
options. That league... Oh, geez, what is... Oh, Blount Rushmore.
Nice.
Yeah, that's all I could come up with in that league. Real quick, that 8-team league I was telling you about. I was invited to participate, and I'm honored to be a part of this league that includes guys that have been doing fantasy football, some of them longer than me. This is my 23rd season. I got guys that have been doing it for damn near 30 at this point.
Doing it out of the newspaper.
Well, there's one league in the state of Iowa that was recognized by Matthew Berry of ESPN fame. And it's the longest running league, as far as I know, in the state of Iowa. And the guy that started all of that, a good friend of mine, and invited me to be a part of this sort of shadow government league this year, which actually he's calling the Little Kids Table. It's a bunch of guys that, because the turnover is so low in this really exclusive long-time league he's in, he wanted to be in a league, create a league with the other guys that, might never get the opportunity to play in this prestigious old school league. So he created the Little Kids Table. And it's
That's
8
awesome.
teams. 8 teams. I drew the number 1 pick. And I didn't have to think too hard about it. I took Adrian Peterson. Here's my team. And I just want your take on this. All right? Quarterbacks. Peyton Manning. Tom Brady. Fitzmagic. All right? Running backs. Adrian Peterson. Justin Forsett, Chris Ivory, Arian Foster, TJ Yeldon, Zach Zenner. My wide receivers, Randall Cobb, Megatron, Emmanuel Sanders, Martavis Bryant, Julian Edelman, Eric Decker. Tight ends, Cameron, Dwayne Allen. Kicker, Dan Bailey. Defenses, Jets and Cards.
It's one of those things where it's like, how did you do this? But then
Right.
you remember it's 8 teams. It's like, oh, yeah. As studly as that roster sounds, what do the other people have?
I don't think their rosters are as good as mine. If I'm being frank with you, I think mine's
Well,
the best.
Yeah, just from a matchup standpoint, I think your quarterback situation is going to be very favorable because you can ride Peyton while he's good and fresh before he gets tired, and then you get that pissed off Tom Brady coming back and just routing people.
Cannot
So.
wait. I cannot wait. So we'll get that action going here soon, and I just wanted to share that roster with you because it is so ridiculous.
Beautiful. Well, I'll rip through 2 of these here real quick. One that it's a league I commish. So my team name is the Commissiosaurus Rex, and I have an evil Barney with some devil horns and giant fangs throwing up some heavy metal signs as my little logo. But so this was a keeper league. I don't know if you're big into keeper leagues. I'm personally not, but I believe in a free society within my league, and if that's what 70% of the league wants, that's what they'll get. So we have a keeper. I rolled the dice on a lot of trades, didn't work out. So my keeper was Forsett this year. He's a workhorse. I don't care who he is or what. He's a workhorse. He's going to get the rock. He was my keeper. So I went Matt Stafford at quarterback, Forsett running back, and this one we do not require a tight end. So Antonio Brown, Jordan Matthews, Golden Tate to pair with Stafford for my double points because he's a 1A in my opinion. There in Detroit, it's 1 and 1A. He has been working with Stafford in that chemistry, and when Calvin Johnson was out, he filled the role of the 1 beautifully. And then I got Ellington is my starting lineup, hoping he stays healthy. Fingers crossed on Ellington. Kicker Dan Bailey. I always go for the dome on kickers. I need that dome advantage. And then I went defense with Miami because of the Sue Cameron Wake. I think Miami is really gonna turn into a slugfest this year.
That's a nice looking team, Brian.
So we got 12. On my first 4 picks, I was all wide receiver. I threw in Mike Wallace in there. He was my 4th receiver off the board up there in Minnesota.
Very nice.
Yeah, so then my other one, it's just kind of one of those, it's a random draft order, and guess who was stuck in the middle? This guy was. I was number 8.
So you feel my pain.
Yeah, I was number 8 on this one. So at that point, I just kind of rolled the dice on everybody, and I'm banking on Sam Bradford staying healthy and thriving in the Chip Kelly offense. I got Antonio Brown, Andre Johnson, picked up Forsett again. Then this is the one where I'm telling you, I had to gamble, and I'm rolling because I'm in that bad spot in the draft board. So I picked up Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Greg Olson's my tight end. I got rolling the dice on the wide receivers with Jarvis Landry, Terrence Williams, Kendall Wright, Kenny Stills. So I kind of went down that way. I was not happy with this draft. So just based off of where I was picking, I took all high-risk, high-reward players. In my opinion, I did. And if it pays off, I'm going to look like a genius. And then I went with Vinatieri as my kicker and Miami as my defense there again.
Yeah, I could tell by the tone of your voice that you weren't entirely thrilled with that one.
Yeah, that was not my baby. That was just, I'm pulling up the 8th spot and it's like, well, this one's over. Just because it's a bad spot, and you have those people in your draft. They're not supposed to mess up a draft board because you're doing what you feel is the best pick. But let's be honest, people can mess up a draft board, and it's just like what people can start runs on players that shouldn't be going. And then are you reacting or are you setting the pace? I mean, there's lots of stuff, and it gets dangerous, and that draft was just not going my way, so I went for gambles.
It's a combination of things, Brian. It's the spot from which you're drafting, and then like you said, too, sometimes people really don't know what they're doing, and they're taking players way ahead of the place they should be or where you thought they should be. I don't know if they're playing hunches or if they're just drafting by emotion, which is stupid. I don't know. But sometimes drafts go that way, and I really hate it because then you really have your work cut out for you throughout the course of the season. Of course, my mantra, and I'm sure you'll agree, Brian, nobody wins a championship on draft day.
No. Yeah, my idea of success is you win the draft on the waiver wire.
Yeah, well, not just the waiver wire, but, working trades and things like that, too. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making a championship squad, and you can certainly help yourself out by having yourself a nice draft, but there's a lot more to it, and, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get there at some point.
Before we wrap up this week's show, want to remind everybody that we are on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. I am on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. Brian's on Twitter at cyber_suicide. So feel free to hit us up. Any questions you might have, trade offers, if you have yet to draft and want our take on whatever, we're there for you. Brian, you've done some amazing work in terms of strength of schedule. So it occurred to me that it's probably something that's important as to you looking at as it is to me. So let's break down strength of schedule real quick and how that might affect how you draft.
Sure. So for me, strength of schedule is important. Yes, it's based off of last year's numbers, looking ahead to this year, but it does play a lot into what the real numbers are going to produce. There's a reason these statistics are used across the board at any major sports news company, any draft kit. They all look at the strength of schedule. So for me, there is that next level of fantasy football that the average Joes glaze over it because looking at charts, they don't get it. What is this? That doesn't mean anything. I'm picking a player. No, you're picking a player, yes, but also the team he plays for has significant impact on how that player does, whether they're playing from behind all the time, are they playing ahead all the time? All of that stuff makes a difference.
Agreed. And if I'm being honest with you, I don't get as in-depth into the numbers as you do. You're kind of a numbers geek, and I say that in the greatest way possible. The most, it's a term of endearment is what it is.
Yeah, it could be a superhero power, I'm telling you.
But I do overall kind of take a look at how past performance might affect future performance, because it is, after all, the only indication we have. So when I'm going into a draft, I do like to draft guys, for example, who are on high-scoring offenses. If I'm drafting, looking at running back A versus B, is running back A on a team that will be ahead a lot and wanting him to salt away games for them? If that's the case, he'll probably get the nod over 1B, who is the other guy who, might be on a mediocre team that might be playing from behind here and there, and they might have to be, abandon the running game here and there.
Absolutely. The big thing for me, and it really depends on the league setup, is if you have how your waiver wire works, when it clears, when people are just completely free agents, there's no waiver, how that all kind of incorporates in. And this is where you can use the league rules to your advantage. Once your Wednesday, Thursday hits, Friday, if there's no financial penalty for you picking players up and there's no waiver wire, you can drastically use the strength of schedule to your favor, picking up based off of matchups and slotting those people in your starting lineup, especially when it comes to defense and kickers, which are always available all the time.
Yeah, that's the streaming option. And, I've heard that done for people even at the quarterback position. Guys who would rather load up on wide receivers and running backs and, get the highest skilled guys that, in the first few rounds and wait on a quarterback and keep waiting. And then eventually when you do take a quarterback, it's not a guy you want to rely on every week. So what you do is you just streamline them. You can do that with kickers and defense, sure, but you can do that with other positions too. It's a risk, but if you're playing matchups and you can play the waiver wire like that, I don't see anything wrong with it. And going back to what you said about rules, if you're not looking at your league rules before you draft, you're doing it wrong. And I've run into this time and time again, and maybe I'm giving away too much here, Brian, but one of the secrets is look at the league settings. Are you getting 6 points for a passing touchdown? You should probably try to grab one of those elite quarterbacks and try to get them early. Things like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Rules are a huge impact, and it's about using those rules to your advantage. It's not cheating. In a league I'm in, the commissioner very heavily compensates the defense for shutouts and sacks. So heavily compensated to the point where they have, if the defense has a good game, they're scoring as much as a wide receiver does. So those things go into your draft strategy. He's never going to change the rules. I cash every year I'm going to draft the best defense, 1 or 2, in like the 7 or 8 hole because their point value is such a huge difference. When you have a 10 or 15 point difference between that and the next defense, that's huge. That's how you win money at this. That's how you win the trophy. That's how you take over your league. And that all comes down to the strength of schedule. I encourage people, go out there, do some research. If you're going to rotate those quarterbacks, you want to look. Weeks 1 through 5, Atlanta is projected to give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They're going to give the first and projected to give the third most points to wide receivers. So if you're looking at these options, you know that Atlanta, Philadelphia, Dallas, New Orleans, and Washington are your 5 worst or your 5 most favorable matchups against your quarterback. So if
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so if you want to make those plays, that's a big difference. If you've got, let's say, Peyton Manning going up against Pittsburgh's defense, or you can have Ryan Fitzpatrick going up against Atlanta. In that situation, you got to tip your hat to Ryan Fitzpatrick because Atlanta's defense is terrible. So there's a greater chance of him throwing up 350 and 3 than Peyton Manning throwing up 350 and 3 against Pittsburgh's secondary. It's those kind of options that it's a 10-point difference between those quarterbacks, and depending on your waiver wire and how the free agency works, can be an easy pickup and a drop for you, and you're going to net 15 points.
We are 1 week away from being 24 hours away from NFL kickoff. Next Wednesday, Brian and I will chat. Next Thursday, the podcast will be available via iTunes and online as well. Look forward to having that conversation with you, Brian, as we break down the Week 1 matchups. We'll use all the tools that we have available, throw a little gut in there as well, and hopefully get folks, our listeners, on the path to a championship season.
Absolutely, and don't forget, once the season starts, you're going to want to make sure to check your iTunes feed, your Stitcher feed, and check the Libsyn website, as there will be a Sunday morning special, 10-15 minute injury update. If you're someone who needs that last minute up-to-date information, we're going to have it for you Sunday morning when you arise from your slumber and you're making your kids eggs or doing what the wife tells you to do, getting them last minute grocery runs in. You can pop in our podcast, listen to it as you're getting your goodies from the grocery store, and you're going to get up to the date injury information that Sunday morning. So you're not going to get that anywhere else.
Brian, there are folks to thank that help make this possible.
There are plenty. First off, I personally, and you as well, people, Rob and Martha Southgate of Southgate Media Group, they are the wonderful people who have put together an amazing podcast network. There's just a plethora. There's over 70 podcasts in this place that we call home on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn. So if you want to open up your eyes to the podcasting world, it's southgatemediagroup.com. Go check it out. We are the fantasy football hub of that group. There's Walking Dead, there's comic books, there's cooking, there's any kind of TV show. There's tons of stuff out there. So thank you to them.
Back to that whole geek conversation again that we had earlier. Brian, that'll be a great way to leave it right here. Until next time, the 515 Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for listening.